Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Technical difficulties. Mic's on. Okay, thank you. We're good. Good evening and welcome everyone to our meeting. We'll start. Number one is the minutes approval for our November 7th and November 21st. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstained for November 21st, I was not here.
Okay, oh, and I was not here November 7th?
I abstained from November 7th.
Okay, thank you. Next are the financial reports for October. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next is personnel. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Personnel non-certificated appointments. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Schilling?
Thanks very much. Just to point out that on your personnel for non-certificated, there is a retirement that we'd like to acknowledge. Mr. Timothy Howell, who is our supervisor of operations, will be retiring at the end of this month. Mr. Howell began his career with us in 1995 as a custodian, has worked his way up to head custodian, and since 2015 he has been our supervisor of operations. A phenomenal gentleman. We wish him absolutely all the best moving forward. The epitome of speak softly and to carry a big stick. We will truly, truly, truly miss him.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And we wish him well in his retirement. Thank you. Okay, that will bring us to our informational items. And Ms. Solari, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Wachter, members of the Board of Education. Tonight I'd like us to take a look at policy 8210.1, use of surveillance cameras on school property. As you know, we currently have this policy as written. It provides guidance in the use of surveillance cameras, determining who's authorized to access and view the security cameras, as well as establishes procedures for sharing and duplicating video for use in and outside of the district. In light of the fact that we added cameras this year to our school buses, we would like to propose that we revise this policy to include language specific to having cameras on our school buses. So the draft you see in front of you is a slight language revision so that we can include in our policy and current practice addressing the school bus cameras. At this time, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Board members, do you have any questions?
I'm sorry, I had a quick question. Can you just review the, any buses that do not have cameras and where would they be, Alan?
To my knowledge, all of our school buses have cameras, would be the large buses as well as the mini buses. So they're all outfitted with cameras.
All of them right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Also, I just, noticed that it had said that the video camera shall not be used to record audio, but the language will be specific that the bus is recording audio.
We've got to look into that one with council a little bit deeper.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, the board would like to revise this policy, they can take action at their board meeting on January 16th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item for informational item is contract negotiations update, and I turn it over to Mr. Greg Garcia. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, members of the Board of Administration and members of the public. My name is Greg Gercio, and I'm the older and less good-looking of the Gercio brothers who have had the privilege of representing Massapequa for more than 20 years. My role is to serve as the chief negotiator and member of the negotiating committee that represents the school district in its collective bargaining with its teachers' union. In that regard, the board has asked me to read the following statement tonight. There has been much public discussion, and we believe some misunderstandings regarding the status of negotiations with the district's teachers' union. While details regarding contract negotiations are traditionally kept between the Board of Education and the elected representatives from the bargaining unit, in this case the MFT, the board, in an effort to resolve any misunderstandings that may have arisen, has authorized this statement to clarify the events that led to the joint declaration of impasse by that led to the joint agreement. Is it off?
Now it's on.
Wow.
Keeps popping its fuse.
You ready, Bob?
I think so.
All right. That led to the joint agreement by the board and the MFT to declare impasse and seek mediation from the Public Employment Relations Board. On June 30th, 2019, the current MFT contract expired. However, that is a misnomer. Pursuant to legislation enacted by the New York State Legislature, commonly referred to as the Tribal Amendment, expired contracts remain in full force and effect, including wages, benefits, step increases, and pay for post-employment education. The whole contract remains in effect. After interest for a short one-year bridge agreement was expressed by both sides during the 18-19 school year, the board proposed rolling over the same salary increase noted in the last year of the expiring contract in exchange for two items: a control on salary advancement procedures recommended by the district's internal auditors, and the continuation of grade 6 parent-teacher conferences. In late April, the MFT rejected the board's offer and instead elected to go to full contract negotiations. The first bargaining session commenced with the exchange of proposals on May 15, 2019. The bargaining teams met two more times on June 12th and June 25th, where the board's bargaining team informed the union counterpart of the board's willingness to negotiate what is commonly known as a going rate salary settlement. That is, one similar to those being negotiated in other surrounding districts. These settlements are well known to the MFT and its parent organization, the New York State United Teachers, NYSUT for short. However, such a settlement would be contingent upon specific favorable union responses to a sufficient number of board proposals, including, but not limited to, the continuation of parent-teacher conferences at the 6th grade level. The meeting on June 25th, 2019 ended with an inquiry from the board's committee about scheduling of further sessions, with full expectation that there would be sessions scheduled in July and August. In response, the MFT's NYSUT representative stated, quote, "Enjoy your summer," unquote. The board's representatives reached out to the MFT negotiator, that's the NYSUT rep, over the summer and on multiple occasions in September, in an effort to schedule bargaining sessions. These efforts proved to be unfruitful. As a result, on October 15th, the board authorized its team to file a declaration of impasse with the New York State Public Employment Relations Board. The board's purpose was to obtain the appointment by PERB of a mediator who hopefully would assist the parties in achieving a settlement. Upon our conversation with the MFT, the union agreed to the filing of a joint declaration, and also as to a joint request that an experienced mediator, Howard Edelman, be appointed by PERB. The first mediation session has been scheduled to occur on December 9th, 2019, at 3 p.m. We are hopeful this process will lead to a contract that is fair to our teachers, the board, and most importantly, our students and the residents of the school district. Lastly, the board has asked me to close by saying that in accord with its policy, we will not make further statements or answer questions with regard to this matter until after the mediation session has had an opportunity to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Okay, number 3 is our special education update, and Dr. McCall.
Thank you. That was very nice. Threw me off guard there. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ms. Wachter, members of the Board of Education, Mrs. Iconis, members of Central Administration. Tonight's presentation is focusing on special education. I'm going to focus specifically on 2 areas. The first area is current initiatives, and the second area is recommendations for the future. Before we start, I just wanted to take a moment to introduce members of the department. Dr. Jennifer Mazad Peretti is the Assistant Director. She is also, she chairs all of our out-of-district programs. Miss Marion Zadalis, who was recently appointed, Marion, say hello. Marion was recently appointed as the interim supervisor of McKenna and Fairfield. Miss Stephanie Del Giorno, who is our Berks Lane and Umpqua supervisor. Miss Rachel Barshak, who is our Eastlake and Lockport supervisor. Say hello, Rachel. Right there. Okay. Mr. Weber is not here this evening, but he is our executive assistant for guidance. Miss Amanda Lenoci is our Berner Middle School supervisor. Miss Danielle Halpin, unfortunately, couldn't be here this evening, but she is our Massapequa High School and Ames supervisor. Michelle Provenzano is our CSE chairperson, grades 6 through 12. And finally, we have Miss Kristen Catalano, who is our CSE chairperson at the elementary level. In addition to these administrators, we also have several department assistants. Dr. Lauren Dean, who's actually here in the back. Say hello, Lauren. Everyone's shy. Lauren Dean does assistive technology for the department. Dr. Diane Deering is our lead psychologist. Miss Grace Hussey, say hello, right back. Miss Grace Hussey is our transition coordinator, and I'll be speaking a little bit about the work she's doing this evening. Miss Courtney Malora is our guidance department assistant, and Miss Denise Watson is our lead speech therapist. So a lot of the ideas that we discuss here in meetings, ultimately, this team is the team that goes back to the building and actually implements all of these ideas. In concert with the teachers, the clerical team members, and also Miss Deborah Marino. Say hello, Deborah. Deborah's the secretary, and she's absolutely outstanding. So in addition to these leaders and administrators, our clerical team, our teachers, our guidance counselors, our psychologists, speech therapists, social workers, teaching assistants, OTs, PTs, BCBAs. It's a collaborative effort. So we talk about ideas here, but ultimately they go back to the building, or for students in out-of-district placements, and they provide the supports that we discussed. So I wanted to thank them because this department is really led in a very collaborative way. Last year, as a function of my first year, one of my jobs was to evaluate all of the programs and services within the department, and then at the January meeting to make recommendations to the board regarding improvement. So last year I utilized the Blueprint for Improved Results, which is a New York State document that has several criteria, and it really is a framework through which we could view our programs and services and make recommendations for improvement. So several of these items are going to be embedded in the report, but it's important to know that we do use a systematic framework when looking at everything. Every year, our department staff go through professional development, and the topics for professional development are based on emergent needs, new laws and regulations, and training in areas that directly impact student achievement. So you can kind of get the flavor of some of the topics that have come up this year: anxiety disorders, assistive technology, behavior intervention plans, creating safer schools. Crisis prevention intervention is also a framework. It's an approach for de-escalating, challenging situations. And what we did this year was we sent Ms. Danielle Helfand, our secondary supervisor, and Ms. Rachel Barshak, one of our elementary supervisors, out to the Crisis Prevention Intervention Institute, CPI Institute, to actually get certified so that they can come back to the district and then in turn certify the staff. So we don't have to send large numbers of staff members out of district to get trained. If we have a staff member who's working with a student, the training is necessary, we can provide it right here in district. So that has been tremendously beneficial for us. So to review, last year on January 17th, exactly 1 year ago, or almost 1 year ago, there were several recommendations regarding initiatives that were made to the board, and they're included here in this PowerPoint. The first one, increasing the CPSC chairperson to full-time, was important. The CPSC is the Committee for Preschool Special Education. Prior to this year, we had a part-time CPSC chairperson. And based on the numbers that I explained, that I shared with the board last year, the uptick in meetings, the uptick in initial eligibility, the board was amenable to increasing that position to full-time. So that's been really, really beneficial for us. It's been beneficial for our families. All of our students in CPSC are visited in various sites by this particular chairperson, and it's been it's really, really helped us to make accurate assessments regarding the appropriate placement for when the students come in district. In an effort to work with families and set a positive tone, a lot of our students with disabilities who are classified at the CPSC level, that is the time period in which we're looking to engage in parent outreach to promote a positive relationship moving forward. Parent outreach is really important, and I had discussed this last year. During the 18-19 school year, the department, in an effort to provide parents an opportunity to come in and discuss ideas relevant to special education, we began the special education roundtable discussions. Excuse me 1 second. I had about 6 cups of coffee a little while ago, so needed some water there. Okay, so we started with these roundtable discussions last year, and the very first meeting we had about 30 or 40 parents there, and we all sat around a table, and there was, a free exchange of ideas. We've had 3 roundtables since, and the most recent ones are structured such that the first 15 or 20 minutes, I do an overview presentation for everyone there, and then we break out into topic-specific discussion groups. So like last time, for instance, we had a dyslexia group, we had a transition group, a CPSE group, an ODP group, out-of-district placement. And parents and administrators and teachers can sit down and they can talk. They can talk about constructive feedback they have, ways in which we could strengthen the programs that we have. So we have another roundtable discussion on the 4th of February, and any parents of students with disabilities who are looking to have candid dialogue with us are more than encouraged to attend. You could also see on this slide there are several other workshops, including transition in the area of transition, introduction to transition planning, navigating the front door process, guardianship and estate planning, parent to parent. All of these workshops are facilitated by Ms. Grace Hussey. I'll talk a little bit about the role that she has this year in a few minutes. But in addition to that, we have 2 workshops that are designed specifically for parents with disabilities to give an overview of the annual review process. What is the IEP? How is the IEP developed? What are goals? What does the Massapequa Continuum of Services consist of? Just to educate and again form partnerships. So this is the first year we've done such comprehensive outreach, and we're looking to continue that into next year. We also serve crumb cake during those nights, and the crumb cake is really, really a hit. Everyone is shocked when I tell them that we make it right here at school. So we have a lot of these evening events, and Miss Festa could attest that we've spent many a night out having candid conversation, about our program. So I appreciate everyone who comes out there. If you look on the slides, you'll see here the online on the website under Student Support Services, we added a section called Special Education Parent Workshop Presentations. And after each presentation, if there's a PowerPoint, if there are supplemental or ancillary materials, we'll scan them and we'll post it there. So if parents who were there didn't grab the materials, or if people who weren't there want to know what we did, they could easily access them. So we encourage parents to go on there, and as we continue these workshops, we'll continue to post. Transition planning is very important, and for a number of years, the conversation regarding a transition coordinator has come up, and a lot of large districts have them. A transition coordinator essentially works with all of our students, but primarily those students grades age 15 and up. And if you look here, you'll see that over the last few months, in just 4 months, Ms. Grace Hussey has done an incredible job at forming outreach with parents, at inviting parents in with students to discuss post-secondary services. She's met with our district leadership team, our principals, our assistant principal, our principals, our curriculum associates, our chair people, our central office staff to explain what transition planning is. She's also met with our guidance team, our social workers, our psychologists, our special ed teachers, and all of our related service providers. So Grace has been very busy over the last 4 months just educating everyone like what transition is. Over the next few years, right now we have several short-term goals, and there are also several long-term goals. This year, right now, we're looking to expand self-determination. If you recall from last year's presentation, self-determination is this concept that students should be engaging in their own advocacy. Our job is to teach students how to advocate, to understand what their needs are, understand what their learning strengths are, understand what their deficit areas are, and be able to advocate for their needs. So last year, during the 18-19 school year, all of our life skills students did presentations at their grade 6 through age 21, did presentations at their annual reviews, and they went really, really well. So this year, we're looking to further expand that, and we're really, really excited about that. We're also going to be developing a district-wide transition team, because transition is not local to one building or one population of student. It's for all students with disabilities. Every student age 15 and up is required to have a pretty developed section of their IEP called the Coordinated Set of Transition Activities, which maps out and delineates what we're going to be doing to support that student, whether it's vocational training, supportive employment, any access to outside agencies is supposed to be mapped out in that section. Additionally, last year, you may recall that we proposed the expansion of our consultant psychiatrist model. Our alternative program at Berner Middle School, the BASE program, has a consultant psychiatrist that comes anytime from 1 to 2 times per month and meets with the team and gives them feedback regarding what they're doing, explains the nature of students' disabilities and how those disabilities impact learning, and sometimes works with parents, and in some cases gives parents referrals. Of course, everything done with a psychiatrist is with parent consent. From time to time, the psychiatrist may observe students, again, with all the parents' consent, and meeting with students as needed. One of the initiatives that I am most excited about was the creation of the therapeutic classes this year by the way, there are 45 slides, and I committed to my central office colleagues that I'd be done in 45 minutes. That's why I'm moving very fast. So the 1212 therapeutic program was designed for students of average to above average intelligence of students who exhibit emotional dysregularity. And so last year, or actually over the last few years, we analyzed it, and there was a trend. There was an uptick in these students who need this level of support. So in partnership with my department and speaking with teachers and with staff, and with the support of the superintendent and ultimately the board, we were able to implement these two sections, these two classes over at the Birch Lane School. And those two classes are divided into a K-1, kindergarten and first grade, and then the older class is grades 2, 3, and 4. And the staff includes, obviously, a teacher in both. They're 12-1-2s, so there are 2 TAs in both classes. And there's also access to the psychiatrist, as I mentioned in the previous slide. And there's a dedicated school psychologist that is dedicated only to that population of students, and a board-certified behavioral analyst, the BCBA. It's an awesome group. I told them I was not going to call them out and highlight them, but I did find this picture of that. It just happens to be in the presentation, and I just wanted to, if you work in the 12-1-2 program, just raise your hand.
There you are.
Okay. These individuals have done an absolutely incredible job over the last, it's really just, 4 months ago we didn't have this program. We have it now. It came off the ground, it's running. It's a very dedicated team. They're there all the time. They're always coming in, advocating for students. They're truly a remarkable group and very dedicated. And the building, Birch Lane, under the leadership of Mr. Aspetti and Ms. Larkin, and Ms. Del Giorno, the special ed supervisor, have really done everything they can to lift the program and to embrace these students, many of whom came from other elementary schools around the district. And it's really remarkable. And I thank the leadership team, and I also thank the teachers and the psychologists and the BCBA and the OT and everyone. I thank everyone for their work, because it's really tremendous. And vision moving to the future, it's just going to keep getting better and better because of such a dedicated team we have there. Just so I can highlight some components, all the staff are trained in crisis prevention intervention. And uniquely, the parent training component of the program, a lot of students with disabilities have parent training added to their IEP to ensure that what's occurring in school could be generalized into the home, and there's that fluid dialogue. So one of the features of this program is the staff in the program actually delivers the parent training. So the parents come in once a month, they meet with the staff, and they're able to work on what's being discussed in the classroom. It's not uncommon to walk into one of the classes and find 2 students on bicycles, sensory bicycles, also doing math assignments. It's very interesting. The first time you walk in, you're like, what are they doing? And then you see them, they're actually engaged in work. They're getting the energy out, and they're engaged in work. And then there are stations around the room. There's a lot going on there. It's one of the coolest learning environments I've actually ever seen in my 17 years here in Massapequa. There's sensory furniture, there's push and PBIS, and there's a daily toolbox for social emotional learning that's emphasized every single day. And they focus on 3 elements: be safe, be respectful, and be responsible, with the understanding that our students can't access learning if they're unable to regulate their behavior, and that's the goal of the program. And so much of the work thus far this year has been on setting a positive tone and ensuring our kids have the services and supports they need in order to access that learning. And again, the team's done an awesome job thus far. There's a lot of collaboration between the 2 classes. There are sensory interventions offered by one of our occupational therapists who travels to Birch Lane just to work with this group of students. We're going to continue to very closely monitor this program, and we're going to continue to strengthen it and adjust whatever service we need to if necessary. Next year in my presentation, I will be discussing with you the future for these students, because we have to plan moving forward. They are doing so well. We want to make sure that that continues. So as they transition through the years, we just have to ensure that they're appropriately supported. So we're not there yet, and we have no 5th graders in the program right now, so we've got some time, but I'm really pleased to announce that. At Berner, at Ames, and Massapequa High School, we have the Career and Community Connections program, and that is a program that focuses on life skills. There's 1 class at Berner, 1 class at Ames, and there's 2 at Massapequa High School. Did I say that already? No, I didn't. Okay, sorry. All right. Okay. Last year, we brought this to the superintendent, who brought it to the board, and then the board put it on a proposition for the community, on a bond, and they approved it. And we're very grateful to the community for this. So over the summer of 2020, we will be doing we anticipate doing a full, I never, when it comes to timing and bonds, I'm just gonna say, we anticipate doing a full renovation of one classroom in the CCC suite at Massapequa High School. And this classroom will resemble a model studio apartment where it would have a washer and dryer, a full kitchen, essentials such as a bed, a lamp, side table, etc. Our students, as they're working on life skills, we need to move beyond the theoretical, beyond like, this is how you do a wash, this is how you use the microwave, this is how you make your bed. We want to actually do it with them, and it's very important. This is absolutely critical to the program. So we're very, very pleased, we're very excited, and again, we're very thankful to the board, to the superintendent, and to the community. During last year's presentation, I also touched on sensory interventions, and I explained that, as an outgrowth of community inquiries and community interest and staff interest, we were going to explore sensory interventions. And so my recommendation was putting a committee together to discuss what sensory interventions are, and what we can do to advance that initiative forward. So last spring, I want to say April and either May or June, we had several sessions, and the Sensory Intervention Committee included parents. We had 6 parents, we had 6 administrators, we had a few psychologists, a few BCBAs, and a few occupational therapists. I don't know why I didn't put teachers on there. It definitely doesn't say teachers, right? Okay, yeah, no, it's supposed to say teachers because we had a lot of teachers on there as well. And we also had speech therapists. I don't know why I forgot that. Anyway, so, and one of the board members is a speech therapist, so that's great. So, and looking at the recommendations that emanated from that committee, recommendation number 1 was to train staff on sensory interventions. And we've done that over the course of September, October, November at the elementary level. We've done overview training, we've pushed into faculty meetings. In the spring, we're going to be doing grade level meetings, and we're going to continue that training in future years. We've also, well, I shouldn't say we, our occupational therapists and our physical therapists, we have one physical therapist who works in district, over the summer in 150-degree weather, they went into all of our 6 buildings, and they literally made cutouts, and they worked with the custodians who stripped the floors. They placed everything down strategically, they designed it, and then the custodians waxed over them. So people look at it, oh, that's great. People have really no idea how much time went into them. I was getting dozens of texts every day. Does this look good? Does this look good? I think it looks great. As they were going through it, they just got better and better and stronger and stronger. Then they went back to some of the original ones and added it. So again, we're grateful for that team for doing that as well. We also, the third recommendation was to purchase sensory tools for our specialized programs, and we did. We purchased a number of tools and a number of items for our 814 program, our 1212 program, and our 1211 program, and we're looking to continue that next year based on the recommendations of the teams. Some of the key points that we focused on during the staff development and the pushing into the faculty meetings is that essentially movement strengthens students' minds and their bodies. Movement activities have positive effects on the brain, and students need time during the day to refresh and recharge. Effective instruction engages students intellectually, emotionally, and physically. Brain breaks could be incorporated throughout the day with not much planning. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute break. It could be a 1 or 2 minute break multiple times throughout the day. And really, we're encouraging everyone to just view students as human beings with the understanding that we all need to get up, we all need to move around. And as I'm going around the district, I'm seeing this all the time. I mean, teachers are already doing this, but now they have, it's just easier because we have the sensory pathways, and those are not just accessible to students with disabilities, those are, in fact, accessible to everyone. And they can be accessed in a number of ways. One, they can be accessed as part of a whole class activity. They can be accessed while students transitioning in the hallway. They can be accessed on days of indoor recess. They can be accessed before or after a special, as part of a small group activity, during intervention services, related services, individually and at a teacher's discretion. So there's lots of opportunities for use, and I've seen them being used. I've tried a few of them, It's actually really interesting. It's actually kind of fun, but I don't want to do it too much because people think that's weird. Pathways are for all students. We encourage them to use them. Take a look at those two awesome, shiny, beautiful pathways that I wouldn't know how to do that. If you asked me to do it, I would have no idea how to do that. Something like that took hours and hours, and we just, again, our OTs and PTs did a tremendous job on that. Okay, so those were the initiatives for last year. Now we have some initiatives for this year. How am I doing on time, Bob?
Horrible.
Good. All right. Should we take a break? All right. So extended school year program. So students with disabilities, not all, but some, qualify for what's called extended school year services. And extended school year services are designed for students to prevent substantial regression. Not all students require extended school year services, and the provision of extended school year services are given to students pursuant to a CSE meeting. It's a committee that places it on an IEP. It's not an individual, it's not a parent, it's not an administrator. It is a committee. It's a multidisciplinary committee. And students who qualify for such services are students with highly intensive needs and require the individualized learning in order to maintain developmental levels due to a loss of skill or set of skill competencies or knowledge during the months of July or August. The Committee on Special Education reviews both qualitative and quantitative data to make such a decision. And in reviewing the programs that we have and in looking at the regulations and in speaking with colleagues and speaking with parents, one of the focuses that we're going to have for this summer is to take a very close look at the ratioed classes that we offer over the summer. We traditionally offered the 814 class, and if CSE recommendations warrant, we are looking to make the summer menu more consistent with the school year menu, such that if you have a student in a 12-1-1 class, and that student, no more than 12 students, one teacher, one TA, if that student needs a certain level of support over the summer, it wouldn't necessarily make sense for that student to go into an 814 class or a 12-1-2 class. Typically, not always, but typically, the program over the summer should, to the extent possible, closely resemble the school year program. So this is something that we're required to do by law, and this is something that I'm very excited to take a look at this summer. And of course, everything I say here is subject to CSE recommendations, so we're not just going to build a class if we don't need it, we're going to build it if the CSE of the students recommend it. In the summer of 2018, New York State Education Department handed down guidance, regulatory requirements regarding dyslexia. And over the last year, and definitely over the last month and last week actually, I've been working very closely with the reading department, with the psychology department, speech department, everyone who would have anything to do with this topic. And we've talked about some of the things that we've done. And one of the things we've done is we've invited Faith Borkowski, who is a dyslexia specialist, to come into the district to consult. She's done staff development for all of our special ed teachers and related service providers. She's also done consultation for some of our students. And she's an excellent resource that we're really, really happy with. But we are working very, very closely with departments I just named to develop evaluations, multidisciplinary evaluations that address all the components of dyslexia. When a parent or a staff member suspects that a student has dyslexia, we need to have a collaborative conversation about what tests we use, what subtests we use, what batteries we use. This conversation has to be fluid, and we're sort of ironing that out now and bringing all the departments together. So I'd like to take a moment and introduce Ms. Tina Farrell, who is just going to say a few things about dyslexia. And I'm going to drink some water.
Good evening, and I'll try to keep the pace that Dr. McCall has. It's my pleasure to share with you some of the literacy programs that we currently have in the district as a way to help students develop the early literacy skills that we know are essential for reading success moving forward, and to also target students' needs if they need additional support. So while we think about the early literacy skills that students acquire or start out with at a very young age, we may think about students singing, young children singing the ABCs, being able to identify their letters and some sounds. And while we know that these are important literacy skills, we also know that a strong foundation in phonological awareness skills is essential to reading success. So the phonological awareness skills focus on the ability to identify and manipulate sounds when presented auditorily. So meaning that's when students hear words, they're able to identify beginning sounds or ending sounds. Or when presented with a word, they're able to break up the syllables. So for example, if we were to give a student 2 words and we say rainbow, students would have to blend those 2 syllables together to say rainbow. Contrastly, which is a little bit more challenging, is syllable deletion. So students would have to be able to break apart syllables or take one away. So if we say, can you say outside without side? They have to say out. So trying to manipulate syllables or manipulate specific sounds tends to be a little bit more challenging for students. Particularly what we have found is that rhyming words, being able to identify a pair of rhyming words or being able to produce a rhyming word when given one word has been one of the key concepts that many students struggle with and has been a predictor of students who may need an intervention moving forward. So while we know these phonological awareness skills are extremely important, we are very happy to say that we have a phonological awareness program in all of our kindergarten classrooms throughout the district. It was developed a few years ago, began as a pilot at McKenna. It was in collaboration with speech and reading departments. So the program that takes place currently is in conjunction with the speech language pathologist, reading teacher, kindergarten classroom teacher, kindergarten support specialist. So weekly, a lesson will be delivered from the speech language pathologist as a whole class lesson, and then there are differentiated groups that break out where the classroom teacher takes a group, kindergarten support specialist takes a group, and the speech language pathologist takes a group, and they work on specific concepts. So if they are working on, let's say, rhyme production, they each have activities that we have developed, cards that are laminated, and data is collected within each group on every single child. So this way we can progress monitor moving forward. Are there certain skills that students did not acquire that we need to make sure those skills are reinforced throughout the program as we continue to move through all of the lessons. In conjunction with the program currently happening, the reading teacher is also pushing into every kindergarten classroom to give support to those students who may be showing some gaps in some of these areas. We also have Foundations program in kindergarten and first grade, which is a more phonics-based program. So in speaking about the phonological awareness skills that students need to acquire for reading success, phonics now brings in the printed letters. So the Foundations program in kindergarten and first grade provides daily lessons for students to acquire these concepts. So they'll learn about diagraphs, they'll learn about welded sounds, prefixes, suffixes. It helps them to read for decoding words. It helps them to spell for encoding words, which is a key factor and something that we look very closely at is the ability to spell words correctly. That is one of the indicators that we look at in terms of tracking students who may need additional reading support. So Foundations is a multisensory approach, so therefore there are tiles, colored tiles. Students are manipulating the tiles to build words. There's dictation as part of the program where students have to be able to think about the way words sound and then be able to encode them. Also writing and letter formation is a part of that program. In addition, moving forward, when we get into 2nd through 5th grade, we took the Foundations scope and sequence for level 2. And in grade 2, we have a scope and sequence so that teachers do continue to follow that scope and sequence. That was part of Foundation, but we're delivering it in more of a mini lesson because we want to be able to make sure that students are still explicitly taught the concepts, but then have other opportunities to individualize or differentiate what they need in small guided reading groups or strategy groups. So we have that in place. We have vertically aligned word study and grammar by standards for grades 2 through 5. The state had broken them up to K2 bands and 3-5 band, and we worked with teachers last summer and the summer before to break up those concepts. So now that we have specific concepts that are provided for each grade level. Is that my alarm? That's my timer. Okay. In an effort to make sure that we have conversations about every child and looking at how they are developing their literacy skills, we have data meetings. Data meetings occur at the end of every marking period. It is a collaboration between all supervisors, literacy supervisor, the classroom teacher, administrators, principal and or assistant principal. And what's great about these data meetings is that we have an opportunity to meet with the classroom teacher. We are able to specifically speak about the students who are currently in a reading support program or being provided additional services, to find out how they are performing in class. What is the classroom teacher seeing? What are some of the connections that we are making with curriculum and in meeting the students' literacy needs during pull-out sessions? And then also be able to have conversations about students who aren't receiving any services, so that we can look at multiple data points. We can look at their performance on the NWEA or AIMSweb, which specifically targets for K and 1 what we are doing with the phonological awareness program. One of our probes for AIMSweb is initial sounds. So while we are having all these data points to speak to, what we are doing in a program aligns with the assessments that we are using, so this way we can see if we need to make any changes in our program, and which students have needs for additional support. I think that's it. We're good? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Farrell. So before I touch a little bit on the employee training, no, I'm sorry, I didn't touch that. I'm going to do that right now. Okay, slow down. All right. The Community Career Connections program at Massapequa High School, I touched on that because we are going to be creating the model apartment there. We're also looking at the employee training program that Dr. Pisano had mentioned in his presentation 2 weeks ago. And essentially this program, it's similar to what we're doing now insofar as job training, but this program through the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities actually allows students to be paid, to be compensated for their work at their various job sites. Now the students need to be OPWDD eligible, they need to be students who are alternately assessed, and this is something that would enable the student to be in a program or be in a job placement that they would be able to possibly keep after they leave. We spend a lot of time talking about our students here and about providing them with services, and I'm always worried, and I know the superintendent is, about our students after they leave here, particularly our students who receive a lot of services. We want to make sure that they're set up for success when they leave, and that's why the transition coordinator, and that's why programs like this, where so many of these students have a job placement and they could potentially have a place to work, to smooth out that articulation will be really, really positive. Right now, it's not that we're not on the ball. We're waiting for OPWDD to assign someone to the district to specifically address this, but we are ready to go there, and we're looking forward to that happening as soon as OPWDD is ready. Our elementary curricula, specifically mathematics, reading, English language arts, is something within all of our special classes that looks a little different. In a 814 class versus a 1211 class, a 1212 class, there's similar curriculum in each subject area, but not exactly. So next year I want to take a very close look with my colleagues in the department and teachers at the curriculum that we have in each area to ensure that all of our ratio classes, the students are able to access it, and that we are balancing exposure to grade level material with functioning levels, right? We want to make sure that we want to expose them to grade level content, but we want to make sure we're teaching from where they're functioning, and we're balancing both. And it's a tough thing to balance, but it's something that we're committed to looking at. I have just a few more slides. So the elementary, right now we have 5 814 classes over at Eastlake Elementary School, and these classes are for students with intensive needs. According to the state ed Part 200 Commissioner's Regulations, and according to best practice, students with intensive needs should be in a class with no more than 8 students. Students with highly intensive needs should generally not be in a class with more than 6 students. So what we're looking at next year it's projected. We have not done CSCs yet, so this is all pre-CSC, this is just projections. We're looking at opening a 612 class next year. That would allow us, like in our 814, we provide 1 to 2 hours of, individualized learning with, lots of cooperative learning throughout the day. Whereas in the 612 class, it's really intensive, individualized teaching. There's a lot of one-to-one direct ABA work. And there is a distinction between the two classes. I know you say, well, you're thinking, because I was thinking, well, it's just 2 kids. It's a whole different approach and philosophy. This is something that's not new to the district. It just hasn't been, we haven't utilized this class model in a number of years. And based on what we project to be our student needs next year, I think this is going to be a viable class structure that we're going to need to utilize. Finally, the last topic is the elementary integrated co-teaching program. So for those of you who may not know what this is, integrated co-teaching is when you have 2 teachers in a classroom. Integrated co-teaching is a very popular service delivery model. If you're looking at the continuum of services, it's more on the least restrictive side. And the integrated co-teaching model involves generally a general ed teacher for the entire day and a special ed teacher for part of the day. At the secondary level, we have a general ed teacher in math, English, social studies, and science, and then we have a special ed teacher in math, English, social studies, and science. At the elementary level, our model has been, over a number of years, a 90-minute special ed push-in. So you have a first grade class, you have a gen ed teacher in there the entire day, and then you have a special ed teacher pushing in there for 90 minutes. Generally speaking, integrated co-teaching is a powerful model. It provides opportunities for both general education and special education students. In fact, there's been a lot of research on the benefits of co-teaching for general education students, not just special ed students. In effect, it reduces the student-teacher ratio. So if you have 20 kids in a class, with 1 teacher, it's a 20 to 1 ratio. If you have 2 teachers, it's a 10 to 1 ratio. And a lot of the research on co-teaching, recognizes and promotes different approaches. So for example, you could have a teacher teaching, and you could have another teacher walking around collecting data, which is very common in the special ed world. We want to take data on the progress students are making with their goals. Or another approach is parallel teaching, where you have 2 teachers teaching simultaneously. It's called half class. It's challenging to do the first time you do it, but once you do it a few times and the students get used to it, it's actually a very powerful approach. Another thing you can do is alternate teaching, where one teacher is teaching the majority of class, and then there's another teacher at a station with a small group, whether it's doing remedial work or enrichment work. And there are other approaches as well, but it really is a powerful model that reduces the student-teacher ratio. The regulations say, and the frequently asked questions through the New York State Education Department say that ICT is not a required program, and it's not a required service within the continuum of services. However, it's strongly encouraged, and I could find no districts on Long Island that don't have it. The districts that don't have it, because it's an expensive model, typically are upstate, rural, smaller districts. Districts, however, can determine, based on need, to do integrated co-teaching at certain grade levels, or in certain buildings, or in certain subjects. Implementation on a full day basis is typically done very gradually because of the budgetary impact. And this is, again, all of these talking points are from the State Ed Department. Over the last few weeks, I've reached out to a number of Nassau and some Suffolk districts and just said to them, hey, what do you do with integrated co-teaching? And if you look up there, not everyone responded, but the ones who did, full day is offered, and this is just elementary, I didn't poll secondary, because secondary it is not a question of the services we're offering in secondary. Full day programs, Deer Park, Farmingdale, Elmont, Hewlett Woodmere, Floral Park, Belrose, Merrick Elementary Schools, these are all elementary. Plainview has both full day and half day. Wantagh, West Hempstead, Valley Stream 24. On the right-hand side, you'll see that for less than a half day to a half day, Belmore Elementary District, East Rockaway, Hicksville, Island Trees, North Merrick. Am I going too fast? No. Oh, okay. Island Trees, North Merrick, Oceanside, Plain Edge, Plainview, Rockville Center, and Seaford. So I just wanted to, before I made any recommendation, I just wanted to see what other districts were doing. So this was really good feedback. I also took a look at the research, and there are 2 authors, Friend and Cook, and they have written extensively on co-teaching, and like all the approaches I was explaining to you before, like parallel teaching, alternative teaching, team teaching, all of those came from the Friend and Cook research. And so this is a quote from Friend and Cook. It said, in elementary schools, co-teaching may occur for a relatively brief period of time, 30 to 4 minutes, in a single subject area, up to all day. You're going to be hard-pressed to find anyone within the special ed department who is not going to be in favor of increasing the amount of time that the special educator is in the classroom. In light of increasing rigor, increased pressure, expanding curriculum, and more pronounced student needs. My goal tonight, and the goal of this review of the elementary program, is to look at everything with an eye toward extending the amount of time that the special educator is in the classroom. So there are two realms for which I have recommendations, or I should say that there's one realm I have a concrete recommendation on, and there's one realm that I'm going to follow up with you at a later time as we're approaching staffing season. One is in order to set up a full-day co-teaching program in the district, I'm proposing next year opening a kindergarten ICT class in one elementary school building. As I said before, or maybe I didn't say it, in most of the districts that have the full-day program, few of them have them at every grade level in every building. And most of them started with 1 or 2 sections, and then it slowly expanded, with the understanding that students who are students who have access to full-day ICT are less likely to have consultant teacher, resource room. A lot of these services are given or have been given because we don't have a full-day elementary ICT program. So as we slowly, with your support, as we slowly phase in an ICT program, I would anticipate that while I'm saying 1 teacher next year, 1 teacher the year after, I think that the staffing needs would move around such that it may not be the addition of a teacher. It's the addition of a position, but that could be someone from within the district who had several resource rooms that no longer exist because now you have a full-day integrated co-teach model. So this is something that the department feels passionately about. I know that parents feel passionately about it, and ultimately the most important piece here is I do think it is is the right thing for students. So I'd like to start with an integrated co-teaching at the elementary level in kindergarten, and then slowly expand it in one elementary school, subject to CSE recommendations. If CSE recommendations change, I will discuss it with the superintendent and with the board. For the non-kindergarten, so for the grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 throughout the district that have integrated co-teaching, we are exploring right now ways in which to enrich that model, ways in which we could enrich that model. I can't give you at this moment in time a definitive recommendation because there are so many moving parts and so many different buildings involving so many different kids, so many different students, but it is something that we're looking at. I know that the board is interested, I know the superintendent is interested in it, and over the next month or 2, I think I'll be able to come back to the board with some concrete data and give you, just a more specific granular recommendation for the grades 1 through 5. But again, for full-day ICT, we're looking to launch that at the kindergarten level. I'm not going to read through this whole thing with you, but essentially on the left-hand side are all the current initiatives that we're going to continue to monitor because we don't want to just start something and then abandon it. We want to watch it, we want to monitor it, and if it's working, we want to continue doing it. If it's not, we want to change it or not do it anymore. So our supervisors are monitoring these programs closely, and on the side of the new initiatives, just in summary, we want to expand the ESY program appropriately to resemble the models during the school year. We want to really hone in on what we're doing for dyslexia. We want to talk about the evaluations that we're doing for students, the specific explicit programs we have in reading instruction, what those programs are, how students qualify for them in tandem and collaboration with all the various departments I had named before. We want to advance the employee training program at the high school level for our life skills students. We want to conduct a curriculum review at the elementary level for special classes. We want to build, subject to CSE recommendations, a 612 class for students with highly intensive needs at the elementary level. And finally, we want to implement a full-day ICT program beginning in kindergarten in one elementary school building, watch it closely and expand it through the years. And we also want to look at, for next year, enriching the integrated co-teaching models at all the other grade levels. So that is a conclusion of my presentation. And at this point, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I really do love coming up here.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. McCall. That was a fantastic presentation, and under your leadership, special education is just thriving, and we love all the initiatives that you are bringing and the life that you're breathing into, and your team and everyone's hard work is noted. Does, board members, do you have any questions?
First, thank you, and thank you.
Thank you.
You are truly enriching our special education programs from the ground up at every level, and with your staff, it's really been refreshing and exciting. So I want to thank you for that. I did have a question regarding the base program versus the wing program and the transition between the two, and what, if any, differences are there between the two?
Sure. The base program exists only at Burnham Middle School, and the wing program exists at the Ames campus of Massapequa High School and Massapequa High School. And although the names are different, the programs are all, they're all pretty, so all right, let me start with the base program. So the base program is open to special education students, non-special education students, 504 students, and students within the base program, they struggle in a variety of areas, and they need access to a counselor. They need a very supportive environment. These students are in all different types of classes. If you may have a self-contained student who has access to the base program. You may have a general ed student in all general ed classes who has access to the base program. It's not a full day in base. It's a site. It's a classroom. It's a very welcoming, supportive classroom where the base psychologist, Dr. Deering, has her office. And in that program, and we also have a full-time special educator in there, so they're able to work on academics and content, but they're also able to work on the social emotional piece. So that is open to, it's mostly 7th and 8th graders, though we do have some 6th graders. We also have access to the consultant psychiatrist in there. So there's lots of mental health support. The Ames wing program is similar to the high school wing program, but the Ames wing program, there's a math teacher, an English teacher, a social studies teacher, and a science teacher. They're all wing teachers. They just have those wing students. And the class is anywhere from 4 kids to 9 or 10 kids. It typically starts the year very small, and then it builds up as the pressures increase and students need more access to support. There's not a dedicated psychologist, but there's an entire support staff at Ames who works with this program. The high school wing program is similar to Ames, however, it is in a location as you're walking to the high school here, beyond the front desk as you walk into the hallway, that's the wing hallway. And so you have students in that program, some of whom are in there for the entire day, some of whom are in there for math and social studies, and then they're in other programs throughout the day. One of the features of the high school program, and the base really, actually the feature of the high school program to me that's so appealing is it's in one location that the students can call home, particularly in a large building. That's one of the attributes of base as well, but the students aren't in there for the entire day. So a lot of these students need a touch-based location, they need a safe spot, and all of those programs have that in one way or the other.
So I guess at the high school level, is there a touch-based location for students other than like a full curriculum location, or is there?
So they have a class called Wing Experience, and that's for all students who are new to the wing. And every student in the wing program has a case manager, general ed and special ed. They have one point of contact. In the academic world, they may have a math teacher or a science teacher, but they also have a point of contact in the PPS office. So they will have a social worker or a psychologist, and the goals are developed. I mean, forget about. Obviously with an IEP, it's very comprehensive, but students without IEPs, we still develop goals for them, and we still meet, and we still are working on the social emotional piece, which is a cornerstone of all 3 programs.
Okay. No, I guess I'm wondering, like, that student that has that base program, let's say that they're then going at Ames or at the high school level, and so I guess they have that designated person in there, but as
obviously, like, let's say that person's working with another student, or it's the school psychologist who's doing testing, or whatever the
Mhm.
situation is, who do they touch base with then? Is it like a hierarchy of people that they would go to in a line? How does that
It's a
work?
really good question, and I know one of the board's goals is to focus on, that transition process. But I do want to just highlight that the guidance staff and the PPS staff, they meet at the end of the year, even prior to the end of the year, and they start talking about the students who are going to be transitioning, and they say, this student needs that constant touch base point, or we give the background on the student to ensure that there's a consistency and an articulation of services that's appropriate for them. But in terms of the 3 programs, I mean, it's a really good question, because they do look they do the same thing, but they look a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it is something that we are looking at, because we always want to strengthen, and most importantly, for our most fragile kids, we want to make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. So I appreciate the question.
And just one other thing regarding the ICT model. Very excited to see that we're going in a direction of expanding that as well. Because I do really believe that there's an importance with respect to that for success for everyone in that classroom, for gen ed and special ed students, that when it's done fully, that's when you see the benefits on both levels. And I'm glad we're starting with kindergarten, but of course I'm always thinking about all the kids here now who are already, in our system. Just what, if anything, we can do, and just as for everyone's, thought process with regard to staffing needs or different things that can be juggled potentially, to even just increase the amount of time at an earlier point. I know you're gonna be looking into it. I know you said you're gonna
We're
research it.
definitely-
I think it's
we're-
such an important thing, and I think that in terms of the hierarchy of importance, that getting that on board so that those 2 students can be successful, and that it doesn't set off dynamics in a classroom
Sure.
with gen ed and special ed students. I think it's such an important thing, and it really promotes inclusion on every level.
I agree 100%, and we're not tentative about that. We want to do that. We just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that we could actually implement, and that we're supporting all students at every level. There's not ICT at every building, at every grade level, and adjusting ICT even by 10 minutes adjusts a lot of teachers' schedules. So we're doing it, we just don't know for how long, and we don't know what the full staffing impact is, but Bob loves talking about this stuff, so I'm going to be meeting with Bob and during the staffing season, and we'll follow up with you soon.
I'm really excited.
Whatever we can do, that was great. Thank you. Thank
Any other
you.
questions?
Yeah, I had some questions. Thank you, Dr. McCall. Your effort and your attitude are amazing, and it's contagious, and I really appreciate you bringing your team out tonight to be with you, and we as a board and the district appreciate all you're doing and accomplishing.
Thank you, I threatened them.
So on the 12-1-2 program at Birch Lane, so after 4th grade, those students, what happens in 5th grade?
Good question. So we originally anticipated to have a kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade class, and then a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade class. It just so happens we didn't have any recommendations last year for 5th grade this year. So right now it's K1 and grades 2, 3, and 4. We didn't have a 5th grader, and that's why we adjusted, because we had a number of kindergarten and 1st graders, and we wanted the classes, not to be imbalanced. So next year, when we look at the number of students who are coming in, and we look at the current needs of the students, the ratios won't change, but the particular grades may change slightly.
Thank you. And then on the CCC studio apartment, where is that going to be in the high school?
That's going to be on the CCC suite, the wing.
New wing.
Right.
The new wing, it's not really new, it's 2005, but the newer wing added to the old building, right. So, yeah, it's down there.
That's great.
Room 81 or 83 or something.
That's fantastic. So on the 612 program, any other districts locally that are doing that now?
Some districts have it, I'm sorry?
We had that model.
Yeah, no, we did have the model. We haven't used it in a number of years, but we have it as an approved model in Massapequa. Some districts have it. A lot of districts have different ratios, but generally speaking, students with highly intensive needs shouldn't be in classes with more than 6 students. So some districts do have it, but not all.
And we'll have that potentially at Eastlake?
I don't know at this point. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to commit to anything. Eastlake, the classroom space is kind of tight right now, but when we look at projections, we'll figure it out so that all students are appropriately supported.
Thank you for your valuable time. Great presentation.
Thank you again, Mr. Boulder.
Oh, thank you so much. Not necessarily a question, but I just appreciate your presentation tonight and all of the initiatives that are happening in special education. I think when you have a child with special needs, you're used to a lot of these like IEP, FAID, like a lot of these abbreviations, and FAID comes up a lot, which is the Free and Appropriate Public Education. I think when you have a typically developing child in MSP, where you're getting more than appropriate education, you're getting one of the best educations. And when you have a child with special needs, oftentimes you're getting, by law, what's appropriate, but there are sometimes better models. So I like that we're looking towards, the ICT for the 90 minutes might be appropriate, but what might be best for that student is getting the full day ICT. So I like that we're looking towards, not just giving students what's appropriate, but maybe what's even best, and can maybe, like you said, limit some of the other needs now if they're getting, something that they really need. So, we talk about individualized, and then sometimes you're stuck with just the few ratios that you have. And so now that we're expanding our options, I feel that families and children will have, more options to get, a better education. So I appreciate all the work you're putting into that, and listening to the families. So we all appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for your very thorough presentation. I just have a question again about the 6.2 class. Would that go over several grades, or would that be specific to only one grade?
So it would depend on the needs of our students. When you're talking about a special class, we're allowed to have a 36-month age range. So it's not uncommon to have students of mixed grades in those classes. But typically the students are grouped according to similarity of need. So as over the next few weeks, I'll be meeting with the supervisors. We'll be talking about students and projected needs. And we generate staffing numbers based on that, but once CSC happens, those needs change. So that's where, working closely with my favorite administrator, Bob Schilling, and the Human Resources Office, that's where we're able to iron out these recommendations and move things forward. Yeah.
And with all these thoughtful recommendations, do you think that it would be possible to bring students who are educated out of district back in district with these new offerings?
That's a really good question. I'm always interested in educating students in district. Ideally, I think we have amazing programs here, and the students should enjoy them. Some students, based on needs, require more restrictive programs. So I'm always of the mindset that if we could educate students in district, let's do it. But there are some students with highly intensive needs who we unfortunately, I would love to bring everyone back, but unfortunately, we're limited as a public school setting in some of the services we can provide. But yes, if we have these programs and they're appropriate for students, we're never going to say, no, you can't come back, if we have an appropriate program.
Great, thank you. And thank you to the team for coming out. It speaks volumes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And just one more quick question before you go.
Yes.
Just the therapeutic classrooms that
Yes.
you have at Birch Lane, do you envision that as those kids are trained in those ways to regulate and the parent training and everything, do you see those children transitioning out into like a mainstream classroom at some point?
Yeah, I mean, some of our students are mainstreaming right now. So, it's called I don't like the title of self-contained. It's called self-contained, but they're mainstreaming. Some of them for snacks, some of them for lunch, some of them for academics, and throughout the year, as they're as we're strengthening them, as their skill sets are being strengthened, we're always open to considering that. Every year there's an annual review, and so if a student has met with success and has acquired some of the skill sets they can now generalize into another setting, as much as the team loves them, we understand that we want the students to meet with success. We want to challenge them, and the best place to do that is in a supportive environment. So we're always encouraging that. It's not like if you're in the program, you're in it forever. And the same thing with the alternative programs. Some students need it, they acquire the skills they need, the confidence they need, and they don't need as much anymore, or they don't need it at all.
And the full day ICT program, how does that relate with that, with the other self-contained, how every, whatever school's graduating, the self-contained is 12-1-1?
Yes.
The kindergarten goes to another building, like how is that all gonna work out?
Yeah, so in the ICT program, we didn't name a building because we truly don't know the building just yet. But when it comes to our self-contained, it would probably make sense in a building that has ICT kindergarten to also have self-contained kindergarten. That just gives us a little bit of flexibility. That's where I'm going to recommend at this moment in time. That we don't have the enrollment to warrant self-contained at every grade level in every building. So this is the reality we deal with. There are definitely lots of strengths of that model, but there's also some areas of that we're working through. But I do think to partner the self-contained kindergarten and the ICT kindergarten is a good way to approach it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we move on to resolutions. Does anyone have any questions on resolutions?
4 and 9.
4 and 9?
7 and 10.
7 and 10? Okay. Is that it? Anyone else? Okay. All right, number 1. Resolve that the Board of Education approve the IEP recommendations as per the attached. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Number 2, resolve that the Board of Education approve the students listed for home instruction. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Number 3, resolve that the Board of Education approve the consultant contracts listed below and authorizes the board president to sign said contracts. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Number 4, resolve that the Board of Education of the Massapequa Union Free School District, upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, hereby approves the submission of an undue burden independent evaluator hardship waiver application to the State Education Department, and hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools and the board president to execute such application on behalf of the district. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Who can explain? Mr. Schilling? Okay.
Okay, so this APPR is the state requirement for observation evaluation processes through the New York State Department. And this waiver represents for is reference to the independent evaluator requirement that's a part of APPR. For the last 3 years, we have applied, like most other districts on Long Island, for this hardship waiver, which eliminates the requirement that would otherwise be in place to have independent evaluators assist in the observation and evaluation of our professional staff. And we've applied for and received this waiver for the last 3 years, and in concert with the administrators unit and the teachers unit have applied for it once again. So.
Any questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Number 5, resolve that the Board of Education recognize that the administrator listed below has completed all elements of the professional development associated with supervisors as prescribed by the APPR regulations, and as such be identified as a lead evaluator. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Number 6, whereas the Massapequa Board of Education wishes to update their policies in accordance with the New York State School Board Association's Law and Management Policies for Schools format, and wishes to provide guidance and policy that meet the needs of the district, be it hereby resolved that the Massapequa Board of Education adopts policy 5605, voter registration for students, as per the attached. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Number 7, whereas the Massapequa Board of Education wishes to update their policies in accordance with the New York State School Boards Association Law and Management Policies for Schools format, and wishes to provide guidance and policy that meets the needs of the district, be it hereby resolved that the Massapequa Board of Education adopts policy 4850, animals in the schools, as per the attached. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mrs. O'Leary?
Sure. If you recall, this is actually having to do, the title is very deceiving, I know a lot of people ask these questions, have to do with science dissections in the classroom, and it simply allows children to be able to opt out of doing a live dissection if it's based on a religious or moral grounds, and it's under parental consent written to the teacher.
Right, they're providing alternatives.
Correct.
Assignment.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Number 8, whereas the Massapequa Board of Education wishes to update their policies in accordance with the New York State School Boards Association's Law and Management Policies for Schools format, and wishes to provide guidance and policy that meets the needs of the district, be it hereby resolved that the Massapequa Board of Education adopts policy 4772, graduation ceremonies, as per the attached. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Number 9, resolved that the Board of Education approves the memorandum of agreement for a successor collective bargaining agreement between the Massapequa Board of Education and the Massapequa Federation of Teachers Secretarial Unit for the period July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2023, and authorizes the board president to sign said agreement. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Schilling?
We have an MOA. So, it's just a matter of review. As the board knows, your representatives at the table were Mr. Adcock, Mr. Gillen, and myself, and at the other side of the table, the unit was represented by co-presidents Ms. Claire Quirk and Ms. Nepali, and that's right there in the front row, and also Ms. Lisa Caruco, along with their representative Barbara Chacoma from NYSET. As an aside, I might add that their side was represented by consummate professionals who came to the table every day exceptionally well prepared, and they acted as strong advocates for the constituents. And I congratulate the unit for voting for such a strong team. Just as a matter of summary of the agreement, I can share, like as you noted, the agreement was a 4-year deal. It will be a 4-year deal that starts on July 1st of this year and ends on June 30th of 2023. As part of the agreement, in summary, the unit will receive a new salary schedule in the first year of the agreement, and then in the second year, that new salary schedule will increase for the top step alone of 1%, and it would be a plus increment for everybody else. In years 3 and 4 of the agreement, that salary schedule will go up 1% plus increment for everybody. There were increases to each of the 3 existing longevities that occur after somebody's at top step. At 15, 20, and 25 years, there are longevities, and there were increases to those dollar figures. There was a $100 increase to the health insurance declination payment, and the unit was successful in acquiring the entire December break off with pay, which equates to an additional 2 to 4 days off, depending on the year and how long the break is. In exchange for that, the district received that same new salary schedule in year 1, which is almost like a win-win. It was a win for them, for their unit, but it also allowed the district some flexibility on our side. The district was able to acquire an increment payments only to occur on 2 specific times of the year instead of multiple times for the year, so that was a managerial win. We received more managerial control on transfers and promotions. We received a revision on the information to be posted when openings exist, and more advanced lead time on notification of retirements. So I'd say both sides got a very fair memorandum here.
Yes, and I know that Mrs. Annette Polly is in the audience, but
I'd like to get up and just say.
You do? Okay.
There we go. I got my courage up. It's my first time that I negotiated, and I'm co-president with Claire Quirk. But I will say, I was so nervous going into negotiations from what I heard. And Alan, Greg, and Bob treated us very professionally, and we negotiated. You know, there wasn't arguments. Yeah, there was going back and forth to negotiate, but in the long run, I think it was fair, and I think we needed that salary adjustment to be in line with the other districts, and as you know, we've been having a hard time hiring and getting people to come in, and the Christmas break is, everyone thinks it's like a big present, so I just want to say thank you, and it was my privilege to negotiate for the first time, and I hope I'll be negotiating in years to come. But I just wanted to say thank you.
thank you so much, Annette. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for all of your hard work, all of you.
Thank
Every day.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. So is, yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? All right, number 10, resolve that the Board of Education appoints the following individual to the Committee on Special Education for the 2019-20 school year, as per Commissioners' Regulations, Part 200, Marion Zavalis. May I have a motion, please? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And any opposed, any abstentions? Welcome. Correspondence was received from Paul Herbold, and updates from the board. I think we only have one thing, unless we're forgetting, but we, on, was it Monday night? It was Monday, Tuesday night. Tuesday night, Gary, myself, Cher, and Allison went to BOCES for a board member orientation, basically for them to tell us all the services that they had available, and that they wanted to stress that it's not just BOCES services that they offer for students, but and then of course in the vocational with the career technology education, right, career technical education, plus all the other services, which I think we do avail of the services. I guess they're just wanting to know that and letting us know that they're a partner with our district, all districts, and that we might want to save money, and I think we get a lot of that aid back. And Alan, I'm sure you could. I know we didn't tell you beforehand, but but I know we do get a substantial amount of money back from BOCES when we contract with them, so we get a better deal. Plus, we get the aid back. Does anyone have anything to add about what you thought about that night, or was it beneficial, or something you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was, I do work for Nassau BOCES, but through the special education department, so it was interesting to see all of the other services that BOCES offers, and they were able to provide a service to us where we were able to look at a dashboard of all the services that Massapequa takes advantage of through BOCES. They explained that because they're cooperative, that if Massapequa and a neighboring district were interested in a service, that would cut the cost for both districts to utilize that service through BOCES, and that a rough estimate was that a lot of districts are getting like 50% or so back on the money that they're spending. So it was good to see that Massapequa is taking advantage of those services. One thing I did see that they offer was like a school climate survey,
Yes.
and I thought that would be interesting, maybe something for us to look into.
And it is something also that we're looking at through Yale. So,
Yale,
yes, the ruler approach group.
It was a very informative meeting. It's eye-opening to see what's out there, and also they showed a bar chart, and Massapequa was high on that bar chart. We take advantage of the programs we offer mainly for the students, but it was eye-opening to see what we can use them for as a board, so it was a very informative night.
I had 2 points. I thought it was a great program. There was 1,521 students in their CTE program, and one of the biggest challenges they have is the stigma with parents sending their kids through blue-collar trades, working with their hands. So they're desperate for people to go through these programs, because there's companies and there's corporations that just can't hire enough people right now. So I think it's eye-opening for me to see that, and I know we offer these programs here in the district, but educational awareness is even more, I think, more appropriate now. And then the other eye-opening, maybe not eye-opening or not surprising, one of the biggest services they're seeing now and needs as far as school districts is mental fitness and mental health. And we're seeing it everywhere across all lines and all society is the need for not just mental health, but mental fitness for our students.
Thank you, Gary.
I also thought it was interesting, that they explained about like you could get like a technical career, go for technical career education, but also graduate with an advanced Regents diploma. So my son doesn't know this yet, but he's going to be a plumber.
Yes, that was one of the things they talked about, was mental health and making it, like you said, mental fitness. It's just like physical fitness, just like everything else, and so they were going to be doing that. they talked a lot about cybersecurity, that was another big one. And then workforce development, and that's where he talked about the stigma about not going to a four-year college, the stigma of working with your hands, and there was a third stigma, but, and so that's what he said, and he said that with people reaching out to the boards, because he said that's where we have to kind of take that stigma away, because there are these jobs that are just not going filled because the kids don't have the skills. Everyone's going to get a four-year degree, and these things are needed. So it was it was interesting. It's great to always see our colleagues from other districts. The school board association's always there at everything. So it's just a great time, and so that's all I have. Does anyone have anything else since the last board meeting? No safety meetings or anything? Okay, yeah, it's gonna go into the,
I attended a college workshop run by Mr. Weber and his team. It was how to determine what school you want to go to, and it was definitely more informative, I felt, than the first one, because it really got into the nitty gritty. And the kids are there and the parents are there, and I think it's important for the kids to go too, because they bring up a lot of points. One of them was called demonstrated interest, and they really want the kids to show that they want to go to the school. That was my big takeaway from it, was how they track how many times the kids actually contact the school. So again, it was all these meetings that we go to, they're just informative and reinforces what a great district we have.
that's great, thank you, Sharon. Okay, so that's our updates. The Board of Education allows time at the conclusion of its regular meetings for comments from residents in attendance. Please note that any person wishing to speak during this time shall comply with all provisions of board policy. Although a total of 30 minutes is allowed